Hello my gravy granules. Yes, I'm massively late to the party on this one, but when they actually announced this game, my internet was down for 2 whole weeks, and I've sort of been sifting through all the footage they've had on YouTube since and been trying to think of what to say about it. Anyway, here are 3 things I would like to see in the Persona 3 remake. There will be spoilers, obviously, but there was a re-release of this game like last year. You know, Persona 3 Portable remaster on basically every platform. So there will be sub points for all of these points because they're quite, big, and 3 points because it's the 3rd re-release of this game, as well as, the 3rd game in the series. Anyway, let's start with number 1. So number 1, more content for New Game Plus. Well, not specifically, but a lot of the things here could be incentives to get people to do a new playthrough. So having like an alternate ending, which I think would please quite a lot of people, because the ending in the original Persona, obviously the protagonist dies, and lots of people don't like when the protagonist dies in a game. The ending was satisfying, but I think they could add like another dungeon to prevent his death. There was a storyline in Persona 4 Arena with Elizabeth trying to like undo the Great Seal so the protagonist can actually, live his life instead of being imprisoned there for the rest of eternity. And that sort of plot line never actually went anywhere. And it would kind of tie up a bunch of loose ends, as well as like being able to prevent Shinji's death as well. You could have like this extra dungeon if you bothered to save him and stuff like that. It'd be something for people to work towards. Like Persona 5 was a game which you could basically get everything in the initial playthrough, and it wasn't that difficult. Like I remember when I first played Persona 4 Golden, I don't think I got the Marie dungeon in my first playthrough. I might have done, but I think there was a lot of things in that game that you sort of had to go out of your way in a second playthrough to actually unlock. It was possible to do in the first time, but it was really, really hard. In this, they've already confirmed that like getting all the social links and stuff is going to be possible in a new game, like a brand new game. In like the original game, it wasn't intended, but you could do it, and in Fez, it was like really hard. So having stuff to actually work towards in a new game would be, well, New Game Plus would be good, or a New Moon playthrough as it's actually called in the series. One of the things they could do is have like side quests to build up to this, like have the Elizabeth boss fight as part of that. And another thing for this alternate ending in a way would be it would actually solve the issue of them not remastering the answer. The answer, which is an additional post-game piece of content that was initially released on Persona 3 Fez, which they haven't done anything with since, and they've confirmed it's not going to be in this. And it was also the worst part of like Persona media going. The story was good, but like the actual gameplay and stuff wasn't particularly great. It was challenging to get through. It was more challenging than listening to a bloody Tool song or something like that. I don't actually mean that, by the way. People are now up in arms that they're not going to do anything with the answer. This would be a good way to, silence that or rewrite history, retcon a bunch of things. It'd be good. And going about canon, would it really affect it? Because I mean, the female protagonist, is she canon or is she canon? And there's a whole debate there, so there's already it's all up in the air, like what is actually canon about this game. Mainly I go by the movies, but who cares? It's just a game. You could have extra stuff, prevent Shinji stuff, that'd be great. And I've gone on a massive tangent on this. One of the other things they could do for New Game Plus is have like reborn personas for the original cast, because the Persona 3 cast at least, actually grows people throughout the story, whereas the ultimate personas of like characters in the games after it only happen when you interact with them and they overcome their like self-guilt or whatever it is. Whereas in Persona 3 there's like events linked to why the characters grow in a way. You can like talk to them in this like post-game dungeon or whatever, and then they grow even more. That'd be nice, I reckon. So, number 2, add scenes from the movies, or just expand some character relationships more specifically. So, characters like Strager to be a bit more fleshed out. In the movies, they're a bit more like interesting. You find out like where they live, their operations behind the scenes. Whereas in the game, you kind of just hear about it. It's like, oh, there's posters that have appeared up all around town. Oh, it's Strager doing that. It's Takaya putting up these posters and stuff. Whereas I'd like to actually see that in sort of person. Persona 3 is a game which, more than the other games, you actually see what other characters that are not the protagonist are doing outside, and they kind of grow in that way. There's like scenes where the characters are talking to each other in the summer, about what they want to do. Like Mitsuru and Fuka sort of confront each other about what's been happening with the Kirijo group. Like in Winter, when they all come to their realization of like why they want to fight Nyx and stuff. That happens without any prompt from the protagonist. And like you do see some scenes of Strega, but they're only there when the plot needs them. I'd like to be able to just like, kind of like run into them in the street, at least before you encounter them, and it'd be kind of interesting to know more about them. Because they're all intertwined in the plot with like Akutsuki. He's like actually feeding them information. They are experiments from the Kirijo group. I'd like them to just kind of expand on that a bit more instead of having it in like the secret documents, which you have to go down to the options menu to find and then read there, which is, I don't know, kind of stupid. And there's also scenes in movies where like Mitsuru and Akihiko confront Jin and Takaya in the Winter when they're like in a church and they're like, he's basically like the reincarnation of Jesus or something, what people seem to think, because he's bringing about the fall. They are some of the better Persona antagonists because they actually appear throughout the story instead of like at the end with some other ones. Or they just so happen to portray, oh, I never saw that coming. Whereas these guys appear out of nowhere and they're a constant reminder of what you're doing throughout, which is quite good. So I'd like a bunch of other things to be tightened up as well. Like the Shinjiro and Ken arc could be a bit more fleshed out. Like in the movie, it's done really well. When they're fighting the Hermit Arcana, Shinji loses control of his persona and Ken witnesses it, and then he has like a flashback to his mum being killed and he realises Shinji is like the one that did that. But before that, they're like pretty close. They're all buddy. Whereas like in the game, Ken is already distant from Shinji and they kind of know, you kind of know something's going on between them. I think it'd be more like emotionally devastating if you had that realization that Ken realizes that Shinji is the one that killed his mum, and it would make more sense. I just kind of prefer that. And let's be honest, when you unlock Shinji, that's at the Hermit Arcana, which everybody is actually going to be using him anyway. You could just lock him in, his persona go berserk during the boss fight. Ken witnesses it because, you know, even though you only get 4 party members, everyone witnesses the fight. It's like everyone's there, but they're not there, if you know what I mean. So kind of like that. Yeah, just tighten up a few more things and the story would be absolutely amazing. There is no way the story could be worse than Persona 5's, which has so many plot holes. It's like the aftermath of Tupac's death. So better balancing. So one of the things I've put this down as what I'd like to see as part of this, but I'm not actually sure if it'd be great and if everybody else wants it, or if they're going to be doing it. So more affinities. They've already confirmed that characters are going to be getting an overhaul in their skills, which is quite good. I mean, Yukari's going to be a lot stronger. At least you won't have to have 2 separate skills to heal everybody and get rid of their ailments, so they'll be tightening that up. One of the things that they've done with some of the characters in this game, mainly Aigis and Ken, is they changed their elements to Nuclear and Psi in Persona Q2. I'd kind of like them to be able to have that in this game. I wouldn't say like fully convert the characters, maybe have them, so obviously we should be able to customize the character's skills. I'd like to have the option of being able to give them the nuke and sight options, and with Ken obviously he gets light skills as well as some electric. I'd probably just get rid of the electric bit from, to be honest, but Aigis gets like physical skills as well as healing, and that's kind of part of her character progression, is that she gets healing skills when she becomes like more human, which I kind of liked. I would just like a way to customize the characters a bit more in their loadouts, so you have more options going into things. As well as this, I'd actually like to be able to bring back the ability to have the protagonist's weapon changed again, because it gave you like more options. Say if you brought like Shinji, Mitsuru and Akihiko, and presuming the protagonist weapon stays the same, you've got 2 slash characters and 2 strike characters for melee, so you'd be missing out on pierce attacks completely, which means you'd have to swap to a persona with that, meaning you have to bring more tools. Whereas if you could just swap your melee weapon, then that's one of them already covered. It gives you more options, and I kind of liked that. But I wouldn't say like completely abandon the way the characters were built in the original. Like some of them, like I said earlier, are built on like character growth. Junpei, when he gets Trismegistus, he obviously gets the Spring of Life skill, which gives him like ridiculous healing, which I kind of liked. But going on balancing as well, make merciless difficulty actually be hard. In P5, it was kind of a joke because the critical rate and damage was so ridiculous that literally everyone benefited from that buff to merciless, which kind of defeats the objective of actually being hard. You just go with a physical build, so you go with like Yoshitsune with Hasutobi, just basically one-shot everything, which is kind of dumb. One of the things you probably would have seen if you've ever watched any Persona content on YouTube is that people make their own challenges of the boss fights in 5. It's like using only X Persona, using only Joker and so-and-so, using only whoever and this and that. So one of the things they could do is actually make it so people could have their own toggleable abilities as like difficulty modifiers. I kind of dislike games. Well, I don't dislike games because of this, but it's one of the features that I like the least is when difficulty is literally just ramp the numbers up. Like, it's a war of attrition, basically, in some of these things. It requires, like, no thinking on your part. So if you had, like, toggleable abilities, like, you could actually bring back the stamina system for Merciless. So if a character gets tired, instead of them taking ridiculous damage, you have, like, a massive debuff to, like, SP or something like that. I think that would be quite a challenge. But also you could have like difficulty modifiers like extra crit damage, crit chance for you and the enemy, or like just the enemy, more health, damage multipliers, ailment chances, recovery time, this and that, less healing. People make their own challenges of this anyway, so if you give them more tools to actually work with in initially when you start up the game, I think that'd be much more challenging than just they can one-shot you in every hit. So if you gave people the option to make their own challenges, that'd be quite nice, because people are going to be doing it anyway with boss fights in this game, provided you can actually like replay some of them, which hopefully they do. Hopefully they bring back that mechanic from Persona 3 Portable with like extra optional boss fights, which you get pretty decent rewards from. That'd be nice. So there's my main list, and so as a bonus point of 3.5 as it were, I would like them to have an achievement or a trophy for letting a charmed party member heal a boss. That would be a reference to the infamous DSP Persona 3 playthrough where he rage quit after Igus healing the final boss in the game, and then Atlas taking the piss out of him for it. This was on easy difficulty as well. This moment lives rent-free in my head, and it's just so good. Atlas obviously took the piss out of him for it, and it would just be funny. It brings shame on somebody who's been on this website for far too long and not been banned despite doing lots of toxic shit. But anyway, there are more things I could have added to this list, and I'm hoping it goes without saying for things like more stuff to do at night, better writing for social links, having, you know, every feature from Persona 5, like, you know, jobs, confidant, bonuses, mini games, easier ways to navigate the world. I think that goes without saying that those things are probably going to be in the game anyway. There's lots of other stuff that I'd like them to see do, but it's like very minuscule things that I couldn't do a video on. One of the hot topics is having the femc in, you know, female protagonist. Honestly, I don't really care. Kind of just thought it was a way for them to sell Persona 3 Portable. It's like, otherwise it would have just been Persona 3 with visual novel cutscenes and nothing else. It just seems like a last minute attempt to get people to buy a worse version of the game. I don't know. I've never been that inclined to actually like champion for it. I mean, every time I've played Persona 3 Portable, I always go for her first because, you know, it's new content in a way. People will always fight online about if she should be added, if she's not, if she's canon, if she's not. I'd like them to at least like sort of reference her, have her as like an Easter egg or a boss fight. If they add her as DLC, that would be incredibly scummy, and I don't think it's like necessary for her to actually be in it, but whatever. Basically, with most of this game, I'll be happy with it as long as they don't shovel the new content in the last act like they did for Persona 5 Royal. You know, here's 2 party members, one of which you could have had 2 dungeons ago, as well as, you know, Akechi, which you could have prevented his death that way. And they shoved all the ultimate personas and that right in at the end. So if you actually leveled up Kasumi, or whatever name you want to call her, you got her initial persona, her ultimate, and then her reborn persona in the same month, which is kind of dumb. Whereas, at least in Persona 4 Golden, it gave you could go back to any dungeon you wanted using their reborn personas. You also got the Haunted Forest dungeon to do, and then obviously the final boss fight and that dungeon as well, which are really challenging. It's kind of dumb. As long as they don't do that, shove it all in one go, I'll be pretty happy, and I'm pretty excited to play a remake of my favourite game of all time. Let me know what you think. What would you add? What would you remove? What changes do you want to see, and what changes you think they should avoid? Let me know. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.